The crash was like nothing they'd ever imagined, violent, merciless, and final. The small private plane ripped to the storm clouds and spun helplessly before plunging into the unforgiving ocean below. When the wreckage scattered across the waves, two survivors clung to life. Victoria Hayes, one of the youngest, most powerful CEOs in America, and Daniel Cole, a struggling single father who had only boarded the flight to deliver a last-minute project for his job. Neither had expected their worlds to collide, but fate had stripped them of everything and carried them to a deserted island where survival was the only law. The CEO who had everything. Victoria Hayes was not just wealthy, she was a legend. Known for her sharp intelligence, commanding presence, and flawless control, she had built an empire from the ground up. In boardrooms, people admired her brilliance, but whispered about her ruthlessness. She was a woman who never cried, never faltered, and never let anyone close enough to see her heart. Luxury was her armor. Control was her weapon. Vulnerability? That word had been erased from her dictionary long ago. But the ocean cared nothing for power. On this island of sand and silence, her designer clothes hung torn, her hair tangled with salt water, and her manicured hands shook as she realized. There were no assistants, no phones, no billion-dollar safety nets. For the first time in years, Victoria Hayes was helpless. Daniel Cole was her opposite in every way. Life had humbled him. After losing his wife in an accident, he worked long shifts and took every odd job he could to keep food on the table for his little girl, Emma. He knew the taste of exhaustion, the ache of loneliness, and the quiet strength of love. Now, stranded miles from civilization, Daniel pushed past his own fear. He steadied his voice, showing Victoria how to collect coconuts, build a fire, and construct a shelter from broken bamboo. At first, she resisted him. Her pride bristled, her sharp tongue snapping when she felt powerless. But when hunger gnawed at her stomach and the nights brought nothing but blackness and the roar of the sea, she realized without him, she would not last a week. The days blurred into a rhythm of survival, hunting, fishing, and gathering. But the nights were the hardest. Victoria would lie awake beside the weak crackle of the fire, her once perfect blouse stained with ash and seawater. Above her stretched the endless stars, cruel in their beauty, reminding her how small and fragile she truly was. Daniel would sit nearby, his eyes shadowed with longing. He spoke sometimes of Emma, her laughter, her bedtime songs, her wide brown eyes that looked too much like her mother's. His voice always broke when he admitted how much he missed her. And though they came from different worlds, Victoria recognized something in him. Loneliness, the same kind that had hollowed her chest for years. Weeks passed. Survival forced them into something deeper than partnership. They argued, they stumbled, but they endured together. Slowly, Victoria's walls began to crack. She laughed at his jokes, confessed her fears, and even admitted how often she felt empty despite her millions. One night, after a brutal storm tore through their fragile shelter, they sat huddled together by the fire, shivering, wet, and exhausted. Victoria turned to him, her voice soft, trembling. Not the voice of a CEO, but a woman stripped bare by circumstance. "If we can't go back," she whispered, her eyes glistening with fear and something else, "must I marry you?" It wasn't a proposal. It was a plea, a confession. What she meant was, if the world forgets us here, if no one ever comes, will you promise I won't be alone? Daniel's chest tightened. He reached for her hand, rough from survival, trembling from uncertainty, and held her gaze. He didn't laugh. He didn't tease. Instead, he simply whispered back, "You'll never be alone, not as long as I'm here." And in that silence, something fragile, something real was born. From that night, the island felt less cruel. They shared small joys, catching a fish together, weaving palm leaf for a sturdier roof, watching sunsets bleed across the horizon. Victoria spoke of her childhood, of the little girl who once dreamed of painting before ambition buried her heart beneath numbers and power. Daniel confessed his fears of failing his daughter, of never being enough. In their raw honesty, they found comfort. For the first time in years, Victoria was not seen as a CEO. She was simply seen as a woman. And Daniel, long weighed down by responsibility, found someone who understood his pain. But the island never stopped testing them. Hunger clawed at their strength. Storms battered their spirit. Pride sometimes rose between them, sparking arguments that ended with quiet apologies. Daniel carried the silent torment of knowing every day on the island was another day Emma was without him. Victoria, used to control, struggled with the helplessness of waiting for a rescue that never seemed to come. And yet they endured, not because life was easy, but because they had chosen to endure together. One morning, after endless weeks of uncertainty, Daniel spotted it. A faint silhouette on the horizon. A ship. They ran to the shore, waving frantically, building a fire so the smoke curled high. And when the ship began to turn toward them, both of them collapsed to their knees, tears streaming down their faces. But with relief came fear. What would happen when they returned to world? Would Victoria slip back into her empire, untouchable and distant? Would Daniel disappear into his quiet life, a single father no one noticed? Would this fragile bond they had forged in fire and survival survive in the noise of reality? The rescue was real. The island faded behind them. Victoria returned to her towers of glass and steel. But something inside her had changed. Boardroom battles felt hollow. Luxury felt shallow. She found herself staring at her reflection, asking who she really was. Daniel returned to Emma's arms, holding her close with a relief so deep it broke him open. But even as he cherished being home, he found himself missing something, or rather, someone. The woman who had seen him. The woman who, in her weakest moment, had whispered words that still echoed in his chest. If we can't go back, must I marry you? Love doesn't always arrive in the ways we expect. Sometimes it takes losing everything to discover what really matters. Perhaps it wasn't about being trapped on an island. Perhaps it was about being trapped in their own lives until fate tore away the walls. And perhaps, just perhaps, the question wasn't whether she must marry him. The real question was, now that they have found each other, how could they ever go back to being strangers? If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of the power of second chances and the beauty of unexpected love, please take a moment to like this video, share it, and subscribe. Your support helps us continue telling stories that inspire, heal, and remind us that even in the darkest places, light can still be found.